Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. This is a kind of book that I have been waiting for so long because growing up, I used to take all of my dad's old, Clive Cussler political thriller books and read them. But after a while, you get really sick of the constant straight white dude fantasy. And I still want all the drama of assassinations and bomb threats and terrorists and shootouts. I just want there to be different kinds of people in them and different kinds of plots with those. So when I got a review request for The Brightest Fell by Nupur Chowdhury, I was really excited because this is a political thriller set in a fictional country called Naijan that is based on India. And the author is an Indian woman. And I did not know this beforehand, but had I known, I would have been so much more excited. One of the characters is a lesbian, but not in the creepy way, she just loves women way. And I love that. So this is a little bit hard of a book to explain because it is a political thriller, and so there's a lot of moving pieces. It is not as cut and dry as defeat evil bad wizard. So this is about the political machinations of this country called Naijan, and it has gone through a civil war about 50 years before the beginning of the story, and so it's this big deal of they've always been kind of on the cusp of falling apart, and their political system has been made up so that each of these two different ethnicities are forced to work together in equal halves. And there's this young scientist named Jahan who has created this drug that was originally meant to curb animosity, basically make people be nicer to each other. The problem is that it didn't really do that. It actually ended up turning people into pliable yes men. It is essentially like mind control almost. Once they take this drug, they will do whatever you ask them to do. And this drug is, of course, highly sought after by evil political people who want to use it to drug their opposition into not being opposition and essentially create bloodless dictatorships. So Jahan has been the son-type figure to his nation's prime minister for the longest time, but after these bomb blasts in the metro kill 40 people, everyone is crying out for interrogations, and they really, really, really want the prime minister to use this drug, and Jahan knows that the prime minister will probably force him to, and a lot of bad things can happen. So he's forced to make some gigantic decisions and essentially manages to shame the prime minister with information that half of which the prime minister didn't even know, until the public is literally clamoring for the prime minister to resign, and Jahan manages to pick up the role himself. So naturally, everyone in the prime minister's family sees him as this giant villain, and the son and daughter of the previous prime minister are like, okay, we need to deal with this jerk face. And the son takes the place as the head of security for Jahan is the new prime minister, and the daughter isn't directly involved immediately, but she does end up in a lot of the political machinations later on, and she is sapphic. I believe lesbian. I don't believe she shows any sign of interest in any man. So I really appreciated that kind of family dynamic where the things that Jahan did to his mentor are genuinely bad when looked through an objective lens, but once you know everything going on behind the scenes, it makes a lot more sense. And Jahan is a character, I don't know that I would call him likable. Now, I've been over this before on my channel. I don't actually need the characters to be likable to want to follow the story. I need them to be interesting, and Jahan is, because he's super sarcastic but doesn't look at all tough. He constantly wears cardigans that are too big for him, and he's super skinny, but also kind of attractive in that skinny boy way, and it's always sarcastic, but also yes, he's doing some things for altruism, but also maybe not everything. And our head of security, which I believe his name is pronounced Abhijat, is your regular hot-headed alpha man. And Rito, who is our lovely lesbian, is much more relaxed and also desperately trying to become more than the kid's sister, and I really liked her, and not just because she was a lesbian character, although that really helped. But it is definitely a fast moving plot. A lot of big things happen. Quick content warnings for trafficking. You do not see anything directly happen. However, there's a lot of discussion about it, specifically sex trafficking. So be on the lookout for that. However, I really enjoyed the plot. It definitely moves so fast that at times I couldn't really get a feel for a lot of the characters. They definitely felt not totally flat, but kind of like basic and standard what they needed to be to move the plot forward. But in a political thriller, that's not really a bad thing. Political thrillers are usually more plot-based books anyway. You get into them for the plot, so the fact that there wasn't a ton of like dramatic heart-to-hearts didn't matter too much to me. And of course, this book actually does have a lot more nuance to it than a lot of political thrillers, because there is that kind of character that does really bad things but for good reasons, and a lot of like hurt feelings that have to be addressed, and I really enjoyed a lot of that. And for the longest time, this was actually on its way to becoming a 5-star, because the writing style was very easy to follow for a political thriller, which is really nice considering the fact that there was a lot of like political talk about political machinations and all the different moves the players in the game would have to make to maintain or gain power or to take down an enemy. But it felt easy enough to read. But I did have to take off 1 star, and I'm going to try not to give too much of a spoiler here, but there is a character who was not necessarily renowned in the text for being like as much of a political genius as other major players in the game, but they turn suddenly stupid for the sake of the plot. Like, obviously, yes, you as the reader are going to know things that the characters don't. You're going to know the secrets that they don't know. But there was this part where I was like, they turned way too stupid, way too quickly, and for way too short a period of time, that it definitely felt like this isn't something the character would normally do. This is something the character has to be to move the plot forward. Like, we need the character to believe X, even though there's not as good of a reason for him to believe it as succinctly as he does, because we need to move forward. And I had to take a star from that, because I spent the entire time not being like, oh no, the things are happening. I was like, oh, come on, you're not this you can't be this stupid. Like, I spent the entire time during this section of the plot just being annoyed that the character was this stupid, instead of being like, oh no, he has been outsmarted. And I realized that I just am using gendered pronouns, but that's fine. There's multiple male characters in this story, so that's probably not too much of a spoiler. But in general, I really like this one. However, I do also think that this is going to be a story that you are definitely going to already have to like the genre to get in. Like I mentioned before, a ton of talk about, politics and political machinations that people use to maintain their power, and a lot of like people trying to do things both in public eye and behind the scenes to like manipulated people. It's a lot of that, and also, of course, assassinations and explosions and all the other good drama stuff. And also a lovely growing WLW relationship. It doesn't actually have a lot to do with a lot of the political machinations. I mean, it does come into the plot like a couple times that these two care about each other, but not majorly. But that's okay. It was enough that it was there, and it wasn't fetishized for the male gaze. I'm happy. So here's the thing. This is usually the part where I would say, if you're an indie author, but I am, once again, closed, basically closed to everyone that I have not already reviewed before. I'm kind of doing a grandfathered in effect for the sake of my mental health, because trying to continue at the rate I was going while having a baby in the house, not smart. It's really not smart. So, unfortunately, yes, if I have not already reviewed your work, I am going to be closed for a while, at least until summer, probably, just until I can get my head on straight. But regardless, thank you so much for watching, and with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.